Hello, my name is Tolg, and I exist, therefore I think too much. I'm gonna read Fred Nietzsche's book of Beyond Good and Evil, and I read slowly, and I cuss, and I rant. If these things bother you, use your free will, that which Nietzsche argues against. It's all good stuff in his head. All good. I left off on chapter 2.39. I did not read it all the way through. I only got to the point about ideals and then started ranting. So I'll be reading 39 and 40. Maybe, because they're both really long. Okie dokie. And summary so far. Chapter 1 was supposed to be about the prejudices of philosophers. Instead, I found out that Nietzsche is very prejudiced against philosophers for being pedantic. And chapter 2 is entitled The Free Spirit. And he argues, rather than an argument, I think he suffers from the need to conquer everything. And possibly suffers the ideation that he is the smartest man in the room. So there was, in a writing class, we went over, I guess a good way to put it is doublespeak, but it's not the doublespeak of George Orwell, 1984. It's when you say something but you mean something entirely different. I call it subliminal speak. I personally think it's a very disrespectful thing to do, but it is oftentimes used in situations where you're making a farce of your morality in consideration of class and class differences. So you find it oftentimes utilized in places where people group together, which is anywhere really, for means of safety. And in writing obituaries, this is what I learned in the writing class, you have to cleverly put what it is you mean to say. And so there was one obituary that said, in writing about him, essentially called him a town drunk, and that he was belligerent and awful, but the way in which they said it was, liked well-aged food, I think, something like that, and then did not suffer a fool. And the term or the phrase did not suffer a fool or could not suffer a fool was a means of saying that he just didn't have the ability of social intelligence. Yeah, so anyways, point 39, where I left off. Happiness and virtue are no arguments. It is willingly forgotten, however, even on the part of thoughtful minds, that to make unhappy and to make bad are just as little counter-arguments. Alright, I think maybe in skipping the idealist part, I lost context? Okay, so it starts off, nobody will readily regard a doctrine as true merely because it makes people happy or virtuous. Happiness and virtue are no arguments. Okay, yeah, I lacked context for that, sorry. It is willingly forgotten, however, even on the part of thoughtful minds, that to make unhappy and to make bad are just as little counter-arguments. I see, so in contrast, or rather, from what he intends by saying what he just did is because it makes me happy. This is not a good reason behind why you do what you do, or not why you do what you do, but why something exists at all, or that it exists in the way that you think it does. And likewise, the contrast is because it's bad and it makes me unhappy is not a good argument for why something shouldn't exist, presumably. Should or shouldn't exist. I assume this is an argument of existence. because it brought up doctrine, and doctrine is in consideration of life, and the only reason you would consider life is if you have the contrast of death. Though I could have taken that way too far. Maybe I'm wrong. A thing could be true, although it were in the highest degree injurious and dangerous. Indeed, the fundamental constitution of existence might be such that one succumbed by a full knowledge of it. To know, to fully understand or to fully know of existence might be a truth, but a dangerous truth to know. He's a very weird guy. I enjoy the hell out of that. Hey, bud. You wanna come up here? So that the strength of a mind might be measured by the amount of truth it could endure, or to speak more plainly, by the extent to which it required truth, attenuated, veiled, sweetened, damped, and falsified. That scene in the movie, "You can't handle the truth," it's just popping up into my head, though I've never watched the movie. I've just seen people quote it in television series. It doesn't... I get that people find comfort in not knowing the truth, especially with everything going on in the US currently. You know, looking the other way at what is generally considered a human right. Especially, I reference again the Nuremberg trials. In lieu of wanting personal comforts and maybe not fully understanding what that entails. But I don't often consider, and therein probably never reach the conclusion that someone might break because they learn of reality. I think I thought of it once. Or I took it into consideration once. Imagine being the silent gen, which is mostly gone because boomers didn't want to take care of them at large. You know, you lived your whole life in the US where racism was celebrated. And in your dying days, after the 90s, especially with the social structure and LGBTQAI leading, you know, everybody into more social awareness than the US has ever known prior. More consideration for other peoples, other groups that may not have had the focus on them, especially where monetary support was concerned. And being 80, 70, 80 years old and being told everything you know isn't in fact knowledge. But a lie. Your entire person grew around a lie. Being 30, it's hard to get to that conclusion myself. It's hard to reteach myself things. And teach myself new ways of being when I can recognize, hey, this is a really unhealthy thing I'm doing. It's very difficult implementing new patterns. I can't imagine double this age, double this information, double this experience, and getting to the conclusion everything I've known is wrong. In that respect, I guess I can understand breaking. And therein is born an incredibly cruel argument, and I recognize how cruel it is. If it can stand to be broken by something that is only true, shouldn't it be broken? Rather than maintain wholeness by living in a lie that does harm to others. What is the more cruel thing there? And then I guess the implementation of it, are you cruel for leading one into knowledge, breaking them against the lies they've lived in? Or would you be cruel for letting them live comfortably in a lie? Value is subjective. But there is no doubt that for the discovery of certain portions of truth, the wicked and unfortunate are more favorably situated and have a greater likelihood of success. Those who are already embittered by life don't mind breaking against truth. I rephrased it. Does it mean the same thing? I don't know. Not to speak of the wicked who are happy. Oh. A species about whom moralists are silent. You know, you could go down a rabbit hole on that one. What is happiness in actuality? I don't. And it's arguable if I really ever have produced enough serotonin and dopamine. Like, I produce it, but I've had pretty severe depression the majority of my life. So I don't produce enough of it. And I think I've experienced happiness. But as of late, being that I live in a healthier environment now, the thing that I have noticed is that if I do feel happy, the next day I suffer depression because I had a surplus of serotonin the day prior, which then crashes the day after. Or it goes back to how it normally is. I'm not sure. It can't maintain that surplus. And the difference between happiness and maybe normalcy is staggering. So it may feel like depression in contrast. Or maybe I don't feel depression normally. But all of this to say, if I've experienced so little of it, or if it's become tumultuous to experience it, can it be considered happiness? Is happiness something that remains constant? Is happiness security? Is happiness comfort? Or is happiness simply the feeling of good? Something feeling good. Ineffable. Perhaps severity and craft are more favorable conditions for the development of strong, independent spirits and philosophers than the gentle, refined, yielding good nature and habit of taking things easily. There's this quote, and I bring it up a lot when I talk to people about music. Lauryn Hill. I don't care how the fuck she dealt with her recent concerts. I could give a shit. She's still an absolute goal of mine, as far as, being human is concerned. And she has a quote where after the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the album she made, she was saying that the studio wanted her to go back into the studio and, pump out music, like album after album. And she told them that she couldn't, because if she was in the studio making so much music, she wasn't out living and in having enough experience in life to make music worth hearing. So even if she made a bunch of music, it wouldn't be music with soul or with depth. It wouldn't have experience backing it up. So it wouldn't bring the same energy and business that the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill brought. When he says only the What is it? Perhaps severity and craft are more favorable conditions for the development of strong, independent spirits and philosophers. Maybe. Is it so much that people have to go through trauma in order to wonder about life, or that they just simply have to experience things that are beyond comfort? If you are constantly living in a nest, then you're not seeing anything of the world. You can't ponder anything of the world. Well, you can question, but I don't know that you're going to have the answers readily available, or even know what to question half the time. So I don't know that it's the negative aspect of experiences that makes a strong spirit or a philosopher so much as its experience alone. And I don't think good experiences should be valued less than negative experiences. Positive experiences. But then I guess the question arises, what is the merit of an experience? What is the value of it? Is the value what you learned from the experience, or is the value that you experienced it at all? I kind of think the latter. Yeah. So, then the gentle, refined, yielding good nature and habit of taking things easily, which are prized, and rightly prized, in a learned man. Oh, whoa. Okay, maybe I had the opposite argument to Nietzsche. Is a philosopher then not a learned man, but a man learning? Ah, that one quote. I don't even know who the fuck it initially came from, but only an idiot thinks he knows everything. A smart person would know that they know nothing. And I don't know if it's exactly the quote, but it's along the lines of, I know enough to know that I don't know everything. I think that's a better way of saying it. Therein can one truly be learned. Is there ever an end to learning? I don't think there should be. Presupposing always to begin with that the term philosopher be not confined to the philosopher who writes books or even introduces his philosophy into books. Isn't that what makes an individual philosopher? Is that they're introducing their philosophy? Otherwise, they're just a mouthpiece, right? Stendhal furnishes a last feature of the portrait of the free-spirited philosopher, which, for the sake of German taste, I will not omit to underline, and then hyphen, for it is opposed to German taste. And it is in French. I am not even going to curse you with my attempt at pronouncing it. In my unlearned existence, it has been my observation that anybody who announces themselves as German takes great pride in German arts. There was this battle of arts between England and France, where England, said France was just dirty and disgusting, and then France turned around and took English books and modeled it into a toilet, so they were literally shitting on their literacy. Colosseum, bread and circus. Why take pride in one over the other? If something is good, it's good. Point 40. Everything that is profound loves the mask. Ow. Okay, so, sorry, rant from the start. There's a sentiment or a belief of the Japanese. Every person has 3 masks. The outermost mask is the mask that everybody sees, is the individuals want to be, how they want to be represented. what they present to the world. The second layered mask, the one in between, is their most intimate side. And the third mask is the depth of the individual that the majority, if not all, of mankind is expected to not know, even themselves. Profound, as I understand it, is equivalent to depth. Profound, intense, deep, incredible, immense. Synonyms. I'm attempting synonyms. And everything that is profound loves the mask. It's been a goal of mine because I really I hate subliminal speak, because if you don't deliver it back subliminally, people think they've one-upped you in intelligence. If you address it forthright for what it is and what you know they intended, they get to laugh it off and walk away and say you're being crazy. And that's why I think subliminal speak is disrespectful. So it became a goal of mine, especially taking into consideration that sentiment, to not have a mask. And, I have the added benefit currently of being taken care of, so I'm not necessarily needing to be in society. And I respect that society expects filters, and there arises a danger in a lack of a filter. And I have absolutely put my foot inside my mouth so many times. Maybe that was way too much of a picture. But, tripped over myself because I'm fucking imperfect and I goddamn suck at socializing. But I thought I would be more respectful towards others if I simply said what I meant and didn't hide how I felt. That way, if there was a problem, it could be dealt with on the spot. But what I found is what I've known, People like pointing out problems, but they don't like solving them. And people expect confrontation if there is a problem. And to me, in all of the bad relationships I've been in, whether that be romantic or otherwise, confrontation is a tool. And if you misuse a tool, you dull it. It's not one that should always be used. It's the claws of a backed up animal, of a cornered animal. You can really fuck up a situation by choosing to fight rather than to argue. And I'm not saying back down if someone approaches you with an opposing viewpoint, and that's why I say there's a difference between fighting and arguing, where arguing is where two oppositions come together to discuss the opposition and land on a conclusion, whether that be to agree, to disagree, or to, walk away. Agree with some of it, I guess. And a fight is where emotions are honored more than logic, or more than the seeking of logic, and are weaponized therein. The profound love masks. If the profound love masks, can they be considered profound? Or is the profundity in the fact that there is so much that is hidden? If you leave nothing to be hidden, the assumption is that you lack depth. The profoundest things have a hatred even of figure and likeness. Well, I'm now confused because that's actually the same sentence. Everything that is profound loves the mask, but The profoundest things have a hatred even of figure and likeness. Of figure and likeness, isn't that a mask? Should not the contrary only be the right disguise for the shame of a god to go about in? I am so lost on the beginning of this. Maybe... Okay, I'm really bad at French, but I am so sure that this doesn't have anything to do with a god or god. So I don't think the beginning of point 40 is relevant at all to point 39. A god should not have a mask if they bear their shame. A god should bear their shame willingly. He made the point prior that if you're in a position of power, your morality is not that of the common man, because the decisions you make are on a grander scale than that of anybody in a position of commonality. Would a god feel shame in the same way that man feels shame? Would anybody be able to recognize it as shame? So he asks a question and then he praises himself in saying the question was worth asking. It would be strange if some mystic has not already ventured on the same kind of thing. Okay. There are proceedings of such a delicate nature that it is well to overwhelm them with coarseness and make them unrecognizable. There are actions of love and of extravagant magnanimity. I hate it. After which, nothing can be wiser than to take a stick and thrash the witness soundly. Victorian period still believed in beating people? Beating sense into people? I mean, they were bloodletting. So. And, I mean, I've said it enough times, that would have been the introduction of psychology where they were using lithium baths. I don't know if they had quite gotten to electroshock therapy yet, but really cruel measures where they thought that the individual could not grow from the position that they were in, and therein it was fine to experiment on them because they were failed as human, I guess. Victorian period was a weird time. Not my favorite. The fashion was alright, but everything else can go away. Did you know? The Victorian period England, weirdest of all of them, sent facial hair in their mail to their, where is it? I was about to say armoire, and that is where you keep your clothes in. To their armoire, as a means of saying how much they love them. Hair was a big thing. I rather enjoy that, every 7 years, every cell in your body is replaced, entirely. I'd hate to have dead cells as jewelry. That's just me. That's just me. Yeah, I'm a little lost. Even rereading it, there are proceedings of such a delicate nature. A god wearing a mask, or not wearing a mask, to show its shame. There are proceedings of such a delicate nature that it is well to overwhelm them. Them? Who is them? Just humanity? With coarseness. And make them unrecognizable. Them now is the god wearing shame. There are actions of love and of extravagant magnanimity, after which nothing can be wiser than to take a stick and thrash the witness soundly. If anybody were to bear witness to the god's shame, then they need to be beat. I feel like I am lost. One thereby obscures his recollection. Well, mine is obscured, definitely. Absolutely. Thoroughly obscured. Many a one is able to obscure and abuse his own memory, in order at least to have vengeance on the sole party in the secret. Shame is inventive. Okay. Who is the sole party? Is the sole party the person themselves or the god with the shame? I agree with the last sentiment that shame is inventive. I said it in a prior video, I'm sure, but I got to a point in life where I couldn't afford shame because I was just shameful. And so if I were to afford myself shame in a position of lacking complete and utter power over everything, in a position of not being able to make a change, then that would be fast track to self-destruction. And if you're being destroyed by everybody else already, my uncle says, why do you kick yourself so much when there are others lining up and more than willing to kick you? At the very least, you should be the one trying not to do so. But in that position, in me having to sacrifice shame in order to, I guess, stay sane somewhat, I realized that it wasn't something I necessarily needed. But I think I wanted to participate in it because it doesn't feel good to not belong. Once you realize you didn't belong and you were just trying to, it's a hell of a lot easier to just go about life. I mean, the insults hurt like hell, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier to just sit down without having to pre-plan out how people are going to intercept and react to you. And do whatever the fuck you're about to do. Deal with it afterwards. Shame is a concept invented by society. And even in you feeling shame, I don't think you necessarily feel actuality. Even if someone were to attempt to shame you, your understanding of what you ought to be ashamed for differs completely from your neighbor's understanding of what you ought to be ashamed for. So shame is subjective. They are not the worst things of which one is most ashamed. I'm so lost. There is not only deceit behind a mask. So we're still talking about... So they is masks. They are not the worst things of which one is most ashamed. There is not only deceit behind a mask, there is so much goodness in craft. There's another thing that was said to me, and I get stuck on it a lot. ADHD follows patterns, and since kindergarten it's been my favorite thing to do is follow patterns. And then, I have issues with authority, so I like breaking a pattern and then introducing a new pattern and making it look cohesive even if it's not. And that's purely craft-wise, arts and crafts. I'm not going to say I didn't try to do it in social situations. I don't know how it worked out, but part of following patterns, it's like cold reading people, being able to deduce the logic of how something ended up being in a person. I mean, to the best of one's abilities, given life is subjective and I can only do so much by genuinely not knowing people. But I was addressed. One person said, I think it's really rude to read people. And I said, if they can be read, I think they should be. And another person said, Sometimes you ought to let people have their masks. I say it a lot, actually. They say that sometimes that's the only good a person has, is the mask they present. And by taking the mask away, I'm taking their goodliness away. And then all they're left on with is the evil to act on, and I should have left the mask. I shouldn't have dug to find the evil. I think I do it from self-preservation. I don't think I ever intended to take away from someone. But I always thought if there was something bad there that I needed to know so it wouldn't be used against me when it's too late. But I think at 32 I'm realizing that I don't need to know everything. I do think learning is a good reason to stay alive, but there's knowledge that's fun and random, and then there's knowledge that is disconcerting. And it may be somebody else's burden to know that more than it ever was relevant for me to understand it. Maybe I'm not holding my place in life by attempting to know everything everywhere all the time. I don't know. I contemplate these things a lot. But that's what I'm reminded of when he concludes there's so much goodness in craft. I assume crafting a mask. I could imagine that a man with something costly and fragile to conceal would roll through life clumsily and rotundly like an old green, heavily hooped wine cask, the refinement of his shame requiring it to be so. Costly and fragile would go through life like an idiot. A man who has depths in his shame, whoa, meets his destiny, whoa, and his delicate decisions upon paths which few ever reach. Does he mean a man who can hold himself accountable? Because that's what it's sounding like. I think you could easily swap the word shame for accountability in this, and it would make a hell of a lot more sense. A man who has depths in holding himself accountable meets his destiny and his delicate decisions upon paths which few ever reach. By holding oneself accountable, what I mean is that you can understand what you do. You're attempting to understand why you do it. But beyond understanding, you know you've done it. And you can stand by your actions and your words. Even if it becomes wrong, you stand by the fact that you did it. That is holding yourself accountable. And with regard to the existence of which his nearest and most intimate friends may be ignorant, his mortal danger conceals itself from their eyes, and equally so his regained security. Am I naive? I mean, I know I am, but am I naive in thinking you should be able to trust your friends? The term acquaintance is lost on society currently, and everybody wants to act like everybody's friends, but no one's really that close. Everybody's literally an acquaintance. And I guess I don't mean to shit on everybody. There's, different groups everywhere, and there are people that have friends that are very much like family, and family that are very much like acquaintances. So everything is subjective. But in modern day, I do think the term acquaintance is being lost, and the respect for it therein. I think it's okay to not be able to trust your acquaintances. But if you've let someone in your inner circle and call them a friend, I think they should be at a point where you have the ability to trust them. If you cannot trust your friends, they shouldn't be that close to you. Are they a business acquaintance or are they a friend? There's a difference. Is it a transactional relationship? Or do you honestly give a shit about the individual and that's why you have them in your life? Such a hidden nature which instinctively employs speech for silence and concealment and is inexhaustible in evasion of oh no, I can't turn the page. Evasion of communication. Desires and insists that a mask of himself shall occupy his place in the hearts and heads of his friends. That sounds miserable. How are you ever to receive love if they don't even know you? How can they love you if you are unknown? And supposing he does not desire it, his eyes will someday be opened to the fact that there is nevertheless a mask of him there, and that it is well to be so. Every profound spirit needs a mask, nay, more. Around every profound spirit there continually grows a mask, owing to the constantly false, that is to say, superficial interpretation of every word he utters, every step he takes, every sign of life he manifests. Expectation of being misunderstood, so donning a mask to be performative as a means of controlling the misunderstandings. That's lonely. That's also expecting the people that have the misunderstanding to not attempt communication with you or further understanding. I don't think that means they're a friend. That means they're an acquaintance. And a cost of energy. Maybe you have a surplus of energy and you need to go waste it somewhere. Who am I to judge? Maybe it's worth your time. Okay, so that was the rest of point 39 and point 40, and I think that made me sad. I think I feel sad. So there's that. I hope you take care of yourselves. Eat well, drink well, sleep well, be well. Bye-bye.